This free program is paid for by the listener members of KPFT Houston. If you're not already a member, think about joining with us to help keep free speech alive.
Somewhere we must come to see that we must rise up and stand on our own 2 feet and say to our white brothers that we are determined to be men. This is what the movement is saying. We are somebody. We are determined to gain our freedom. And we are going to start with ourselves by freeing our own psyche, our own souls. This is where we've got to start first. Well, you see, in the final analysis, if we're going to be truly free, nobody else can do that for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do that for us. No Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do that for us. If we are going to be truly free, we must reach down into the inner depths of our being and sign with the pen and ink of assertive manhood our own Emancipation Proclamation.
I do not know the power of my hand. I do not know the power of my black hand. I sit slumped in the conviction that I am powerless. Towery ceilings that make me bend. My godly mind stoops. My ambition is crippled. I do not know the power of my hand. I see my children stunted, my young men slaughtered. I do not know the mighty power of my hand. I see the power over my life and death in another man's hands. And sometimes I shake my woolly head and wonder, Lord have mercy, what would it be like to be free? But when I know the mighty power of my black hand, I will snatch my freedom from the tyrant's mouth, know the first taste of freedom on my eager tongue, sing the miracle of freedom with all the force of my lungs, christen my black land with exuberant creation, stand independent in the hall of nations, root submission and dependence from the soil of my soul, and pitch the monument of slavery from my back when I know the mighty power of my hand.
Welcome to On the Real Side and another edition of Open Journal. I'm Emmett Abati Doe, and thank you for joining me for this edition and part 2 of Getting Away with Murder, the Atlanta child murders. In part 1 on June 8th, we told the incredible story of what by now is the all too familiar Keystone Cop-style investigations by local, state, federal authorities. A kangaroo court compounded by yellow journalism of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and the national media, compounded by black leadership steeped in denial, greed, and complicity. A story about a city too busy to hate, but not too busy to scapegoat one of their own young rising stars. They all failed, not just to stop the killing spree, but they allowed black and white suspects police investigators had multiple eyewitnesses and or very incriminating testimony against to escape the so-called bar of justice. Then they turned, arrested, charged, and convicted Wayne Williams without one eyewitness, no motive, no opportunity, and no history of violence. Yet the state and the media presented to a waiting world a case built on innuendo, misstatement of facts, prosecutorial lawlessness, and a single fiber type to prove his guilt. Today, we ask the questions, did black leaders in Atlanta allow the tail to wag the dog? And if so, why? And what must we the people do to unlock and break the spell cast by propaganda-based yellow journalism and the labels of leadership? And most importantly, start to answer the why and how we must free our own psyches, our own souls, and demystify all religions, authorities, the FBI, politicians, the Just Us Department of the United States. Returning to On the Real Side is Chet Detlinger and Jeff Prowl, the co-authors of the 1983 Pulitzer Prize-nominated book, The List, that chronicled many unreported facts and little-known truths about what really happened during Atlanta's reign of terror. Also joining us will be attorney Michael Jackson. Although we had to pre-record him, he could not be here live. But we will hear an interview shortly with attorney Michael Jackson, the lead counsel for the man convicted of murdering 2 adults, yet is known the world over as the man convicted of the Atlanta child murders, Wayne Williams. And time permitting, we will hear parts of an exclusive On the Real Side interview with Dr. Joseph Lowry, the former co-founder and president of SCLC. Dr. Lowry was the man who appealed to the world to send money in support of the mothers of Atlanta's murdered and missing children, money that very few mothers ever saw or received from the often repeated SCLC appeal, or the millions received by Atlanta's City Hall. For the record, the following letter was hand-delivered, to the offices of the former Atlanta Public Safety Commissioner, Lee Brown. It is addressed to His Honor. Dear Sir, as the former Public Safety Commissioner of Atlanta during the height of the child murder spree, we should like to have you join us for the Open Journal Hour, when I will host On the Real Side, Part 2, entitled Getting Away with Murder. The live program will be broadcast on July 5th, 2005 at 12:06 p.m. Central Standard Time from the KPF studios at 419 Lovett Boulevard, Texas. Part 1 of Getting Away with Murder aired on June 8th with 4 guests, Chet Detlinger and Jeff Prowl, co-authors of the 1984 book, The List. DeKalb County Police Chief Louis Graham and Catherine Leach, mother of 13-year-old Curtis Walker, whose case, as you may know, has been reopened. Should you wish to hear the first program, visit the KPFT archives at www.kpft.org, Open Journal 6/8/12 noon. Your participation in the program would bring vital insight and balance to this story, since you clearly occupied the eye of the storm during that tragic time. Note, address your response to my attention, ASAP, care of KPFT, sincerely. A similar letter was faxed to Andrew Young, the former mayor of Atlanta, at the offices of Good Works International. As of airtime, neither has responded, although last week, that's not my dog, folks. Last week, I had been in contact with people in their offices. So when we return, we will begin with attorney Michael Jackson's interview. So call a friend. That's right. Call them right now and tell them to tune in to On the Real Side at 90.1 FM and 89.5 FM and on the World Wide Web at kpft.org. I'm Emmett Abati Doe. Attorney Michael Jackson, welcome to On the Real Side.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Attorney Jackson, would you, for our audience, give us an indication very briefly as to how you got involved with the Wayne Williams case? How long have you represented him?
In approximately 1987, when I started law school, my first summer internship was with William Kunstler. And one of my first assignments was to go down to Atlanta and review a room full of documents that had been produced and assess whether or not they'd been produced at trial and what their import was. And in the course of that, we came across dozens of documents that showed that most of the key witnesses had lied and provided false testimony. It was a stunning array of documents that had been withheld by the state. And I've pretty much been on the case ever since. One of Bill's last dying requests was to see Wayne get justice. And so, I've gotten increasingly involved over the course of the years and remain so to this day.
And what is next for Wayne Williams?
We're working on the federal habeas corpus petition right now, quite aggressively. It's in discovery mode at the moment, and there's a contested discovery order that we're trying to resolve with the court. The state has appealed the magistrate's order.
How usual is that, sir?
How usual is that?
Yes.
There's nothing about this case that's usual, so I don't even know how to respond to that other than to say that their opposition, while outrageous, is not a surprise because they've obfuscated our efforts for complete disclosure in this case since long before I was involved. It started at the time of the trial when they deliberately hid a large quantity of evidence from us. And to this day, the state has taken the position that we're asking for too much, which is completely absurd.
I know you are pressed for time, and I thank you very much for allowing us to have these few moments. So I'm going to get right down to the nitty-gritty. How are the bills being paid, and can you use public support?
Thank you for asking. Everybody who's been working on this case since I've been involved anyway, and I won't speak to prior to that, but I suspect it was the same. None of us have ever gotten paid. The bills are getting paid by the various defense counsel right now saying, okay, I'll pick that up, I'll pick that up. The flights have been out of our own pockets.
I would like very much to extend to you and your co-counsels a venue and a platform to get information out to a larger public, because here at KPFT, we're the little station that could, and we're very, very committed to doing as best we can to let people know what's going on, because there is definitely self-interest involved. I used to live in and around Ground Zero, right across from East Lake Country Club, and had I stayed there, my son would have been about 8 or 9 years old at the time, and he could have been on the list. Well,
we appreciate the fact that you're interested in it. And, everybody's kids could have been a part of this wave of killings.
Not if they were white and middle-class black.
Well, I know. But it all depends on what you think of the list. I believe that some of these kids were killed by a group of people. And some of the murders on the list, I believe, were probably random acts. It's never really been explained to my satisfaction that there was a connection between all these murders, which is part of the problem with having closed them all when Wayne was convicted.
The then police chief or public safety director, Lee Brown, is the former police chief here in Houston, Texas, and also the former mayor. And he came directly from Atlanta here as the police chief. He's been invited to come on to the show and discuss, his role, and he has chosen not to respond, to not even acknowledge receipt of the letter inviting him to come on the show.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
And I also sent an invitation to Andrew Young, the same, and I was trying to get a hold of Dr. Benjamin Hooks. So it seemed like the only one that had anything to say and was accessible was Mr. Lowry, Dr. Lowry. And we have an interview that we're going to get around to playing sometime. And if there's a break in the case, we'd like for you to let us know about it.
Anytime.
Okay?
All righty.
Thank you very much, sir.
Anytime. Thanks for calling.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Well, we did have an opportunity to get some information from Michael Jackson regarding the status of the Wayne Williams case, and we're hoping that he'll keep us posted through KPFT as to what happens in the future. Jeff and Chet, are you on the line?
Yeah, we're both here.
Okay.
Emmett, you're betting 1,000 again.
It was what?
My last name is pronounced Prue. It rhymes with Prue.
Prue, okay.
That was my dog. Yeah,
that was your dog.
Alarm.
Well, I'm glad he wasn't in the studio because there wouldn't be enough room in here for the two of us. Okay, gentlemen, first let me thank Jeff for the information and the Associated Press connection, and my thanks to both of you, of course. But what I'd like to do is to deal with an issue that has come to my attention, and that is, and please bear with me, this is just going to take a little time to set up to express my concern and pose, 4 questions. You got it, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Some other sources in the media sent me documents that call into question the objectivity of what I still want to hold as a noble effort. I'm holding a copy of a letter dated August 19th, 1982, written by Georgia State Representative Mildred Glover, addressed to then Assistant Attorney General William Bradford Reynolds under the Reagan-Bush White House. I know you're both familiar with the Glover letter because it is mentioned on page 489 and on page 501. You wrote on page 489, quote, "By late summer of 1982, Georgia State Representative Mildred Glover, Democrat, Atlanta, assisted some victims' mothers in drafting a petition, which they took to a meeting in Washington with William French Smith, then Attorney General of the United States. In the petition, they asked that the cases of their offspring's murders be brought to trial." Paragraph. "They, too, wanted their day in court, a free person's right that you would think should override the administrative needs of the local district attorney. Wayne Williams had been accused of killing their sons, and they wanted him tried for the murders. After all, isn't that the ideal we're all taught to believe in?" Close quote. Later in the conversation, we'll revisit that assumption. And reading from page 501, quote, "A few days after Annie Rogers and several other victims' mothers visited Washington there to voice their nagging skepticism to U.S. Attorney General William French Smith, the telephone rang at Annie Rogers' apartment in Thomasville Heights," close quotes. "The petition in my hand that was presented introduced a number of very damning and disturbing revelations. First, that the son of a white family too poor to flee the community in transition claimed involvement and responsibility for the murder of black children. Secondly, the person gave details as to the street routes taken by members of his family to their place of employment, located in the midst of the killing fields, where the first child on the list was reported last seen, the E.Z. Food Market at Fairburn and Campbellton Road. The name has since changed. Thirdly, the transcripts included details of where bodies were dumped and how they used the side door of a mobile home to dispose of the bodies undetected. Fourthly, that it was known that local white men were paying to have sex with black children. Fifth, a tape recording, the transcript was made from a recording the transcript was made from was turned over to the Attorney General at that meeting by a state representative and a number of grieving parents doing the job of the task force, the FBI, and the GBI. A tape recording of the father of the young man and another unidentified white female was placed in the hands of the Attorney General of the United States of America. All this characterized as nagging skepticism. My first question to you, gentlemen, is, was the name, location, and the possible connection of the E.Z. Food Market as a piece to the puzzle ever mentioned in the book? If so, in what context and in what section? Because I couldn't find it. Second question, why was the full text or content of the Glover parents' petition not included, explained, or developed in the book, The List? And thirdly, black homosexuality and amoral behavior is a constant theme throughout the list, be it among black elected and appointed city officials, or homosexual activity among black male children, or the amoral behavior of 14, 17-year-old female prostitutes. But yet, not a word about the possibility of uncovering a nest of white pedophiles and possibly a coven of child murderers. Why was the facts suggesting such a possibility not deserving of equal line space in your book, gentlemen?
Well, I can answer that from my perspective, Emmett. First of all, there was mention of white pedophilia with regard to John David Wilcoxon.
Yeah, the gentleman who was convicted.
Yeah, he was convicted, right. But he was convicted after, supposedly, he was engaging in sex for hire with two of the youngsters who wound up on the list of missing and murdered children. That was Luby Jeter and Earl Terrell. This was documented from police reports from
I don't know whether it's you, Chet, but there's a bunch of noise going on, so if you could mute your phone, I'd appreciate it. Okay, go right ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, there was a youthful eyewitness who testified that he was participating in this scheme, too. I mean, he testified, I mean, he gave his statement to the authorities. He didn't testify at the trial. As for the allegations contained in Mrs. Glover's letter, which I presume that you were reading from Mrs. Glover's letter?
That's correct. I got it off the FBI FBI website that declassified this and other documents. Right.
You know, Chet and I talked with Mildred Glover on a number of occasions, and I had occasion to talk with her well after Wayne Williams' conviction, because she was meeting regularly with the parents, or many of the parents, I should say, at her home. And very frankly, I couldn't get any documentation, or I couldn't get her to bring to the fore any corroborative evidence or anything that could corroborate any of this.
Did you see her letter?
With it, I mean, I think her intentions were very noble, but the substance of what she was saying was just too difficult to back up.
Okay, the letter that she sent to Reynolds, did she make available to you? Because you referred to it, so you had to see it in order to refer to it.
Well, she didn't say it was to, wasn't it to William French Smith? No, that was the meeting was with William French Smith.
No, right? No. The letter that I have in my hand is William Bradford Reynolds, Assistant Attorney General. Now, when they went to Washington, D.C., they met with the sitting Attorney General at that time,
right,
which was French. But I'm saying because you gave reference to this letter in the book, you had to have seen it. Is that not true? Because you talk about it on page 481, I think it is.
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that we actually saw the letter. I think what she did was she enumerated to me some of the things that the issues that she enumerated to me verbally, some of the issues that she was raising about various suspects. And I asked her to bring me, proof, show me the evidence, and I couldn't get her to do that.
Okay,
these were, and it's worth pointing out, Emmett. These were among many allegations that she threw out there that were not contained in any formal communication that I know of. I just couldn't get her to back up exactly what she was saying.
Okay, I'm reading from 489, and I read it earlier, but I'm reading it exactly out of the book, where it says late summer of 82, and the letter is dated August, so that would fall into late summer. Georgia State Representative Mildred Glover, Democrat, assisted some victims' mothers in drafting a petition which they took to a meeting in Washington with William French Smith, then Attorney General of the United States. In the petition, they asked that the cases of their offspring murdered be brought to trial. Now, so you're telling me that you never saw this letter? She never made this letter available?
Right. This was, as I recall now, this meeting that she had with William French Smith and with some of the parents, that was reported not only in the wire services, but in the local press there in Atlanta when that occurred. No,
I understand this, gentlemen, but what I'm asking is, what did you know and when did you guys know it? In terms of, since you did have an opportunity to talk with her, right. and then you characterized what you are saying may or may not be clear in terms of your understanding as nagging skepticism. When these people give transcripts, I mean, this was presented to the Attorney General and a written transcript and the tape, and you're telling me that you guys never saw the transcripts that were presented to the Attorney General?
Transcripts from whom?
Transcripts, well, the people are not named.
Right. That's part of our problem right there.
Okay.
We don't know who these people are.
Well, I understand, and there are a lot of information that was made available in the book that is not necessarily credited to specific sources, but you guys felt confident enough about the probability of it to mention, including a homosexual tryst with an elected official.
Well, it's also important to point out is we did not mention by name the person who was accused.
I understand.
In one of these.
I understand,
because he had not been arrested at that point.
And this woman presents. She gave a tape recording. She gave a tape recording, and she gave a transcript to the Attorney General. Now, because she was not a lawyer, which is probably a good thing, but she was a state representative, and her credibility and her veracity should have carried, some weight to at least develop the possibility that this was so, because the threat of homosexual activity and involvement with the children and with officials and et cetera, all through the story. You cannot tell the story of the Atlanta child murders and missing children without talking about homosexuality.
Well, and heterosexuality. There's a threat of heterosexuality here, too, with regard to Cynthia Montgomery, who was a prostitute.
I understand.
Right. So it's
but that was one
equal opportunity.
Right. No. That was one situation, and that was well developed and was all part of the whole. But the thing that the thing that concerns me is that here you have people who are at ground zero. You have people who are working in the neighborhood, which is part of your map, Chet, right? I mean, Fairburn and Campbellton Road is right there, and it was right where the first body was found. So it would give you a location.
Where the first body was found. Go ahead.
I'm sorry? It's the first person on the list.
No, it's not where
that part is inaccurate.
Well, it may be inaccurate, but it's in the book.
Look, I don't know how well you know Mildred Glover, but I attended several meetings with Mildred Glover. In one, Mildred, I don't like Mildred Glover. She and her husband were very, very nice people. But in one meeting, they tried to convince me that the mayor and public safety commissioner were homosexuals and were responsible for these murders. I just, I don't put the same credence in what Mildred Glover has to say as what you do, number one, okay? Number two, as far as the letter is concerned, I never saw the letter. Jeff may or may not have seen it. He probably wrote that part. But in any event, when it comes to charges of black homosexuality, no one, and I never inferred that these people were black. I talked about John David Wilcoxon, who's a white man. I talked about St. Louis, who's a white man. There was no inference of race in anything that I wrote. And, for you to try to find it sort of amazes me.
No, it's not about an inference of race. We're talking about boys. We're talking about black boys. There were no white boys. There were no white boys mentioned in the whole book, Chet. So
there were white boys mentioned in the book.
Yeah, Dewey Bogus.
There was a white child mentioned in the book?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I think there were two, Jeff, or three. Lee Bogus was the first,
Mercedes Master
and the other one,
Dewey Bogus.
Okay.
Was one off of Red Wine Road.
And those were the bodies.
I think they're included, I believe, in the group of people who were not on the list.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they turned up dead too. Chet had developed that information very early on with those two people, and they were never put on this task force list.
Okay. Well, we all have talked about how ambiguous the criteria for getting on the list or not getting on the list was. And one of the things that I had hoped that if Chief Brown had made himself available, he could have been the perfect person to explain how that happened.
Well, I sort of doubt that because I don't think Chief Brown knows anything about these cases. And I'm not at all surprised he's not there.
And also, Emmett, he couldn't explain it when he was Public Safety Commissioner.
You know where the Chattahoochee River was?
Okay. Now we're talking about the man who was in charge of the task force, correct?
Well, nominally, because the task force actually was under the command of an Atlanta police officer and a GBI director. He was the spokesman for the task force, and that I think that's covered in the book. That he took that on himself, and in doing so, freed up about maybe 10 or 12 white chiefs of police from catching any flack. He took the flack for all of them, which was a mistake on his part, in my opinion.
Or maybe it was his job. Anyway.
What do you mean was his job?
It might have been his job to take... to
take slack off of Dick Hand, who was the white chief of police in DeKalb County?
Sure.
No, wasn't it? That couldn't be his job. He was the public safety commissioner of the city of Atlanta.
And
when he spoke only for the city of Atlanta, except when it came to the task force. And then he spoke for all of them. And most of them didn't even know what was going on. I remember I had an afternoon with Dick Hand. It was very interesting. At one of the public parks, or one of the state parks here in Georgia. And he wasn't even aware that so many of these cases, well, like the 6, for example, that his successor, twice removed, has reopened, what had happened in DeKalb County. Lee Brown was talking about them all the time, but Dick Ham wasn't even aware that they had happened there. So, hey.
Hey, Keystone Cop, right?
Who?
Keystone.
Oh, absolutely, Keystone Cop.
Now, gentlemen, let's go back just briefly. I said that the first child on the list was found within blocks of the alleged location of the Easy food market. Now, on your map that I have here in front of me, we have the Edward Hope Smith, age 14.
On Niskey Lake Road.
I'm sorry?
He was found on Niskey Lake Road.
No, I said he was last seen. He was last seen at Campbellton Road and Fairburn Road.
At a party.
He was last seen.
At a party.
Okay, right. But that is the very location of the Easy Market.
So?
Okay, so I'm saying that if someone is providing information that is credible in terms of specific people living in specific places and they were all in the same neighborhood, why wouldn't someone have saw to it that an investigation into these allegations were either ruled in or ruled out instead of dismissed out of hand because who presented or who brought the message? I mean, it sounds to me that that's the same thing that was repeatedly identified as what the task force would do. They would have information brought to them, and because it didn't fit whatever they wanted to hear, they just dismissed it and let it fall through a crack. And here, women who have an interest, you have a public official go to the #1 law enforcement officer in the United States of America.
Stop right there.
Yes.
that was a mistake, because the number one law enforcement officer in the United States had nothing to do with these cases. He has no jurisdiction. He couldn't order them retried, etc. Some of the parents who went there on this mission also went there on what he called a bogus errand, because their children's cases were not cleared with the arrest of Wayne Williams. So, what you're talking about is a morass, okay? Insofar as like I said, you put more credence in those people than I do, but that's your...
Well, it's not I don't know whether or not credence is what I'm saying is deserving. If you have a sitting state representative who's not declared mentally incompetent, because she had to have enough sense to get elected, even though that's questionable oftentimes.
It is very questionable.
Okay, but at least, and she also had enough commitment to get involved and to do what no one else was doing, because the NAACP wasn't doing nothing, the Urban League wasn't doing nothing, SCLC wasn't doing nothing, the ACLU wasn't doing nothing. Nobody was doing anything for these parents, and she at least stepped forward and did what she thought was the correct thing to do.
Right.
And she presented what was enough evidence to have it ruled in or ruled out. But you're telling me...
You presented to me.
I'm sorry? No, I'm saying...
I've never seen a letter from Mildred Glover to anybody.
No, I'm saying that
The only thing I know is that I attended meetings with Mildred Glover in which she came off with some really weird ideas.
Okay, I'm saying, and I probably got a weird idea right now, and what I'm saying is that here she presents a tape recording to a law enforcement. The Attorney General is involved in the mechanism, and if he's aware of a crime, et cetera, he's responsible for doing something. If it's nothing more than picking up the phone and saying to someone else, hey, you got to do something with this, he has an obligation to do that. And the information...
Anybody in the United States of America has an obligation to do that.
Okay, so fine. So she brings evidence. She brings evidence, a tape recording.
A tape recording of whom?
A tape recording of someone that could have been verified. That's the point. That's the whole point of this, that everyone in that room would have been willing to have given testimony as to who the person was, but maybe not to you and Chet, but they would have been willing to give information as to who the person was. And in fact, there's documents that I have to show that the man tried to bring the attention of his confession and the knowledge that he had to the police, and they ignored them. So again, it seems that if it didn't fit, and if it wasn't what someone was looking for, it could have been right there in front of someone's face, and people ignored it. And I just can't imagine how this kind of information, with people having proximity, people...
You know what? Part of your problem, you don't understand what happened here. You don't understand how many of those kinds of information, and how many of those tape recordings, and how many of those things were presented to various people around.
Well, if they were...
I listen to tape recordings of people, you wouldn't believe. I know a lady in Oregon who's convinced her father killed these people.
Well...
You know?
Okay,
I can't convince that lady that it's impossible for her father to.
Okay,
I've heard all the business about all of the devil worshippers and all of the satanic cults and all of the things that happen in funeral homes. I've heard all that.
Yeah, but Chet.
Yeah, I know, but you haven't heard it. And that's your problem right now.
The fact is...
You're taking one document, which I've never seen. I haven't the slightest idea what I'm talking about, so I might as well shut up.
Okay, the fact of the matter is that psychics were paid. This thing, I mean, people who call themselves psychics were brought in by official sources and paid and compensated and wine and dine, or whatever the case might be. So if there was a willingness to bring psychics in on this thing, then I would think that it would have been a very simple matter for them to have checked out very specific language, very
Number one, if that message was given only, I don't know who it was given to, but if it was given to the federal government, I'm telling you it was given to the wrong people. They had no power over it. They had nothing to do with it. They probably stuck it in a file someplace, to be honest with you.
No, I have a letter here from William Bradford Reynolds, Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division. stamped the 30th of September 1982, in which he responds to Ms. Glover. And he further says, after careful examination of the evidence, federal authorities concluded that no violation of the federal criminal statutes could be established in any of these cases handled by the task force. We are referring your letter to the FBI in Atlanta for consideration of the new evidence which you have brought to our attention.
The FBI is also a federal agency, and I don't know what the FBI did with the information.
Okay, so my point is that here we have the evidence. Apparently, Bradford didn't throw the information in the trash or didn't dismiss out of hand who brought this information to him, because and this nonsense of whether or not a person is dead because there was a civil rights violation or not a civil rights violation is a subject for another show altogether, because a person is dead, and then we're going to have to talk about, well, was he killed because people hated him because he was black, or was he killed because people hated him because he was a homosexual, or was he killed because someone thought he was straight? The point is that he's dead, and when it comes down to it in America, that people start splitting hairs about not moving until you first determine the motive of the killer, and not the fact that the person is dead and somebody has to be assigned and held responsible. You know, this place has really gotten, in bad shape.
I hadn't gotten there. It's been there for a long time.
Okay, it's been there a long time, and one of the remarks that you made in the closing of the book, I think that was you, Chet, that said that the people really knew what was being done to them, they would bomb us.
Yeah, that statement was made by a member of the Justice Department, and he made it to me in his office. I'm just trying to think of his name. But in any event, I think there should be a monument built to that man, because he's the one man that stood in Washington, D.C. and told the truth.
Could you relate briefly, we have about like 1 minute, but would you be kind enough just relate briefly, because that's a story worth telling?
Yeah, well, I went to Washington to discuss the crime prevention, quote unquote, with one of the directors of the FBI, and it was a wasted morning. But Paul Haynes was the guy's name. Paul Haynes at that time was a very high official in the Justice Department, and I knew him from Kentucky. And I paid Paul a visit, just sort of a courtesy visit, I guess. And he had an office that overlooked the ellipse, and you could see the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Monument in his room, and of course the place where Martin Luther King gave his famous speech. And we were looking at that, and he looked out there, and he says, Chet, he said, if the public knew what we were doing to them, they'd bomb us, and we deserve it. And I think he was absolutely right.
Okay. The website that folks can go to get these documents, and you guys can take a look at them as well, is http://foia.fbi.gov. And click over on the right-hand side, electronic reading room, and then go down the alphabetical listing at the right and click Atlanta Child Murders on the list, and click 9B, I believe, or 96, Part 96. No, it says Part 96.
Okay.
And go to page 75, and you can read for yourself the details. And I'd like for you or anyone else, after you read this, to tell me how it fell through the crack and didn't even deserve equal billing with information that was speculative as well. But gentlemen, I'd like to say that we're going to revisit this again. It's clear that this is something that is not going away, and its time has come to begin to give an account as to what's going on, not just with the Wayne Williams case, but the Wayne Williams case is part and parcel of hundreds, if not thousands, of similar cases where justice doesn't work, or as Richard Pryor says, justice is just us.
Yeah, that's right.
And it seems that we, I'm talking about we as black people, have every reason to suspect that there are two, and in fact they have created two classifications of not just citizenship, but two or maybe five classifications as to justice.
Well, I think the present administration has created more than that, because I don't feel a part of this administration at all.
Well, I understand that, but all you have to do is change your party affiliation and start...
No, I'm changing mine.
But the
I want a big button that says, he's still not my president.
Well, it really doesn't make any difference because Carter and Clinton were not your president either.
Well, Carter wasn't. Clinton was.
But anyway, I'd like to say that there are compelling evidence that there are double standards, triple standards, and there's a game going on here, and it's like a conversation between a chicken and a pig. And, you know, a chicken is involved with breakfast, and a pig is breakfast. And we've been having a lot of conversations, I'm mainly speaking about black people, conversations about our circumstances and what's going on with us with a bunch of chickens. And these are liberals, these are people who are do-gooders, these are people who are well-intentioned, et cetera, et cetera. But until we understand that we're the target, that we're going to be breakfast, then we need to begin to start looking at things from the perspective of a pig instead of that of a chicken. Unfortunately, Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell have been convinced that they're chickens. And but the rest of us need to understand who we are in the grand scheme of things and begin to realize that the Justice Department and the FBI is like the weasel.
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
In your mind, is Jeff Prue a chicken?
Oh, he's a chicken.
Pig?
Both of you are chickens.
Chet Dettlinger a chicken? Or
I'm sorry? Is who?
Chet Dettlinger and Jeff Prue, are they chickens or are they pigs?
No, they're both chickens. Both of you guys are chickens because you're involved with breakfast. You're not breakfast. If you understand the metaphor. The chicken is,
but I don't agree with
a chicken is involved with breakfast, and given an opportunity, you can, shave, change your clothes, and duck out the back door, and maybe be hard to identify. But I can't do that. Okay.
I think I'm getting indigestion.
You're getting indigestion. Okay. But the facts are the facts, and I want to thank you guys for allowing yourself to come back again. And as this thing further develops, we may visit this again. But clearly there's something else going on because there's too much similarity between this case, the Wayne Williams case, and Reuben Hurricane Carter, and so many other cases where nothing makes sense. But the
O.J. Simpson, for example.
I'm sorry?
O.J. Simpson, for example.
O.J. Simpson, Michael Jackson, you can just go on and on and on. It just doesn't make sense. And when it doesn't make sense, you never have white people on trial. You never have white men accused of things, and the whole case just doesn't make sense. I mean, unless it's Lee Harvey Oswald, okay, but he never got tried either. So anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on The Real Side, and I'd like to know that you'll accept an invitation if they allow me to get on the air again and revisit this subject of the Atlanta child murders and what we need to do to really understand why maybe we do need to bomb them. And again, what do you got, 2 minutes, whatever? 1 minute. Okay, gentlemen, if you got 20 seconds, you can say, have a last word.
Well, I would just say, Emmett, I would extend yet another invitation to Lee Brown and to Andrew Young and to Benjamin Hooks, if he's available, to come and join us around the table there in Houston, and we'll talk about these cases.
I'll do so.
And it would be wonderful.
I'll do so. And, Chet, thank you very much. And that dog, you need to feed him. Okay.
But you're a good pig, right?
Dogs eat the natural food of a dog is a chicken. Okay. Be careful.
Dog eats houses.
Okay. Thank you so very much. And again, thank you very much for joining us here on KPFT, Open Journal. I'd like to thank my engineer, Brian Jackson, and I'd also like to thank Sharon McGinnis, who helped me do the research, etc. And until next time, until we join again on The Real Side, I've been your host, Emmett Abati Doe.